people being receptive to new ideas, people who consider them spiritual in whatever manner they are, or say they are, often don't actually utilize those things that are spiritual. People who think they are something, therefore believe it and think that that's sufficient. And if they run across something to the contrary, for one reason or another, they reject that because they are established in what they believe about themselves. People who don't have a preconception or belief about something are far more receptive to new ideas in this area. Everybody knows that, if you ask them that. But if you test them out as a practical matter, and you then give them something that's contrary to the belief they have, they will reject it, even though you just said such and such is the case, and they say, yes, I know. People are funny, aren't they? I have some new ideas about the economy. They're not, well, they've been put together in a new fashion on one of my websites, but I have presented this information to very successful wealth managers and other people with economic contact, and they are totally blinkered about even listening. They won't even listen. I say, there's some interesting here you need about hyperinflation or something coming, and they say, well, we've got that covered. Blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. But people who don't have that contact with financial preconceptions, they sit down and listen, and they understand it very clearly and very easily. People who believe they know something are their own worst enemies. And if they are in government or managing your portfolio or something, they are your worst enemy. Take, for example, this is a classic. I was rummaging around in a used bookstore one day, 40 years ago, and I was just looking around, and I saw a book on the stock market. Now, I'm not interested in financial affairs exactly very much, but for some reason I thought, well, this is interesting looking, and so I just opened it up to the center and started reading. And it said that finally the Congress had passed new regulations, etc., and changed the reserves and the banks and instituted all kinds of checks and balances and such, and this went on for about a full paragraph showing that all the economists and the public and the Treasury and everybody was, kind of self-congratulating and patting themselves on the back, and they had done all these things so that whatever they were talking about wouldn't occur again. Well, I was in the middle of the book, and I didn't know what they were talking about. So I turned to look for the copyright, thinking, maybe this will give me a quick way of figuring out what they are talking about. And I looked at the copyright, And would you hazard a guess what the date was? The date was 1929. That means that on the very eve of the biggest crash virtually in stock market history of the United States, this book was saying this about the economy, etc. Virtually, maybe even weeks just before the crash that ushered in the Great Depression, the likes of which this U.S. hasn't known, except perhaps since the other hyperinflation that the U.S. has had in its history. Yet here were all the economists and the government officials and the president and the Congress and the bankers, and everybody was breathing a sigh of relief. Well, that'll teach you. I mean, it should, shouldn't it? No, but it doesn't. And I point this out to economists now, and I'm, starting to talk about this information that I have put together and uncovered, etc. They dig their heels in, their eyes glaze over, and they, it's just like, even though you quote that story, they are themselves the same, in the same role, and they don't even see it. People are so strange.